The sky above Earth shimmered with strange lights that no human radar could explain. Deep in the forests of Alaska, where the air was cold and the nights long, an object not from Earth came silently to rest. It was not a crash, no flames, no smoke. It was a landing, planned and precise. From the craft, 3 figures stepped out. Their skin was smooth like stone, eyes glowing faintly blue, their bodies taller and thinner than any human. At their head was Captain Threx of the Velari Alliance. His mission was clear: land on Earth, observe humans, and if possible, make peace before war ever becomes an option. Captain Threx was not afraid of humans, yet. His species had studied hundreds of planets, conquered some, made peace with others. But humans were a mystery. A species from a death world, as they called it in the galaxy. A place where everything tried to kill life, yet life grew. Stronger. As they stepped on the soft Earth soil, sensors in Threx's suit beeped wildly. The air was breathable, the gravity tolerable, but the radio waves the signals. They screamed danger. The humans were always broadcasting, always watching, always fighting somewhere. It was strange. Most species evolved beyond war, yet humans never stopped. "Are we being watched, Captain?" asked one of his officers, scanning the dark trees. Threx answered with a grim voice, "Of course. They watch everything." Moments later, spotlights snapped on. A dozen human soldiers, armored and armed, surrounded them. But the humans did not fire. A tall man in a military coat stepped forward, unarmed, though his eyes were sharp and cautious. "I am General Walker of Earth's Defense Council," he announced, his voice echoing in the cold air. "You have landed without permission. State your purpose." Threx stepped forward, raising his hands peacefully. "I am Captain Threx of the Velari Alliance. We come with peace." The general nodded slightly, but did not lower his guard. "That's good. But on this planet, peace is proved by actions, not words." Threx smiled politely. "Then let us prove it. Take us to your leaders." Walker chuckled dryly. "That's a tired phrase, alien. But lucky for you, they're waiting." Under heavy guard, the aliens were transported to a military base hidden deep in the mountains. Along the way, Threx observed Earth's landscapes: green forests, icy mountains, vast cities filled with lights and machines. Yet something was always present: weapons. Even civilian transport had security measures. Even the smallest town had some form of defense. "This world is armed like a fortress," Threx whispered. His officer nodded. "But against who?" "Their own kind?" Threx frowned. "Exactly." Finally, they arrived at a high-security facility. Threx and his team were escorted into a large chamber where screens showed Earth's might fighter jets, tanks, missile launches, ships in space. A human woman in a dark suit stood waiting. She was President Elena Royce, Earth's elected leader. She watched Threx with eyes like knives, sharp and ready to cut through lies. "Welcome to Earth," she said coldly. "We have no hostility towards you, but we won't tolerate threats." Threx bowed slightly. "We bring no threats. In fact, we come to understand why a species such as yours a death world species is not ruling the stars." President Royce raised an eyebrow. "And what makes you think we want to?" Threx chuckled lightly. "Because with your weapons, your technology, your spirit, you could." The room fell silent. The president stared at him for a long moment before replying, "We don't start wars, we finish them." General Walker stepped forward. "Captain Threx, do you wish to see why aliens fear waking the human war machine?" Threx tilted his head. "Yes, show us." And so began the tour. They were taken deep underground into a secret vault, one that held Earth's most dangerous weapons. Not the ones seen in public, but the ones buried in shadows. Nuclear warheads that could shatter continents, stealth drones that could kill without being seen, and prototypes of weapons that could cut through planets like paper. Threx and his officers watched in stunned silence. They had expected weapons, but not this, not madness. "You have weapons that could destroy your own world," Threx said in disbelief. "Why build such things?" General Walker's face was cold. "Because history taught us that if you want peace, prepare for war." Threx turned to his officers, his voice low, almost a whisper. "We thought we could measure human strength by their cities, their ships, But now I see. Their true strength is their willingness to build things that should never exist." As the visit ended, Threx stared at Earth's night sky from the mountain top. The stars above looked peaceful, but he knew now it was a lie. If war ever came, if the stars ever declared war on Earth, the humans wouldn't just fight back, they would erase the enemy. Threx sent one last message to his homeworld. "I have seen their world. I have seen their weapons. We must never fight the humans, for if we do, we will not survive their answer." Captain Threx stood silently as the human soldiers guided them deeper underground. The air grew colder, the walls thicker, and the lights dimmer. The tunnels were not just protection, they were a statement. Humans had carved these paths into solid mountain, building bunkers meant to survive the end of the world itself. General Walker led the way without speaking. His boots echoed like gunfire against steel floors. Finally, the group stopped before a gigantic steel door, taller than a house, wider than a starship hangar. "This is the archive," Walker said, his voice firm. "Inside are weapons never shown to the public. Weapons we hope we never need." Threx exchanged looks with his officers. The tension was heavy, like breathing through cloth. What were humans hiding here? With a heavy groan, the steel doors opened. Inside was a hall filled with metal monsters' machines. Of war, each deadlier than the last. The first device was a silent drone black as night, sharp like a blade, designed to fly undetected. A human engineer explained, "It can enter any atmosphere, any planet, without notice. It carries enough power to wipe out an entire city before vanishing again." Threx's second officer whispered, "We don't have anything like this, not even close." Next, they were shown a row of orbital weapons. One looked like a long metal spear, meant to drop from orbit at impossible speeds. A scientist called it the Rod of God. "It doesn't explode," the scientist said proudly. "It just falls. But the kinetic energy, it can flatten a mountain range." Threx stared, a weapon that destroyed with pure speed, without chemicals or radiation. "A weapon that lets gravity do the killing," Threx muttered. Humans turned nature itself into a gun. But it wasn't over. General Walker took them to the final section, a chamber sealed behind glass, where strange black devices floated in liquid. "What is that?" Threx asked. Walker's eyes darkened. "Bioweapons. Designed to kill silently. This one eats carbon. A single drop could turn a city into ash in days." Threx stepped back instinctively. A single weapon, no sound, no fire, just a city gone. "Why?" he asked, his voice shaking. "Why build this?" Walker stared at him coldly. "Because we learned that. Peace is temporary, but fear lasts longer." Threx felt a chill deeper than any ice. Humans did not just fight wars. They built ways to end them before they started through terror. Then Threx saw a display of Earth's history. Wars across centuries. World wars, nuclear standoffs, invasions, revolutions. Millions dead, billions scarred. But every war pushed humans further, made them smarter, deadlier. One screen showed simulations. What would happen if Earth was invaded by aliens? The scenarios were brutal. In one, humans detonated all their nukes, making their own planet uninhabitable, just to deny the enemy victory. Threx whispered to his officer, "They are willing to destroy themselves, just to ensure their enemy dies too." His officer shivered. "That is not war. That is madness." But Threx shook his head. "No. That is strategy born from pain. Only a species that suffered so much could think like this. General Walker stood nearby, listening. He stepped closer and said softly, "We don't like war. We just refuse to lose." Those words stayed in Threx's mind. As the tour ended, Threx stood before one last screen, an unfinished project. A weapon designed to collapse a star, turning it into a black hole. The screen showed simulations of entire systems being swallowed in darkness. "This is theoretical," Walker said, "but if we're ever pushed far enough, we'll build it." Threx's hands trembled. His mission was clear: observe, understand, report. But now he understood something terrifying. If humanity ever decided to wage war on the galaxy, they wouldn't fight battles. They'd erase planets. As they left the vault, Threx messaged his homeworld quietly. "Humans possess weapons we cannot. Imagine, their minds create terror, their hands shape extinction. If war comes, we will not just lose, we will vanish." And yet, in Threx's heart, a deeper fear grew, not of the weapons humans had but of the ones they hadn't built yet. The journey through Earth's secret weapons vault had left Captain Threx disturbed. But what followed next chilled him even more, not a display of weapons, but a journey through history itself. General Walker led Threx and his team to a wide chamber, filled with holographic projectors. One wave of the general's hand, and the air itself came alive. Scenes of human wars danced before their eyes. There was no music, no glory. Only fire, screens, and smoke. Threx watched as holograms replayed. The World War's soldiers in trenches, poisoned by gas, shot by steel, drowned in mud. Machines called tanks rolled forward, crushing everything in their path. Giant cannons blasted shells that shattered landscapes. "Why?" Threx asked. "Why did your people kill each other like this?" General Walker answered coldly, "Because we disagree, and when we disagree too much, we stop talking and start killing." Threx saw the Cold War next, missiles pointed at each other for decades, ready to destroy Earth in minutes. And yet, neither side fired first. A strange, dangerous dance where peace survived only because of fear. Mutually assured destruction, Walker explained. "We call it mad, because to stay alive, we had to agree to die together." Threx shook his head, confused. "You built death on such a scale, just to avoid using it?" "Yes," Walker replied. "Because it works." The next projection showed the wars of resources: oil, metals, water. Humans fought not just for power, but for the very things they needed to live. Another display showed wars over beliefs, ideologies, skin color, flags, madness to any alien mind. Threx turned to his second officer. "They don't need survival as a reason. They'll fight for anything." Yet what struck Threx the hardest was the faces of human warriors. In every war, whether ancient or modern, the human eyes never changed. Not just anger or hatred, but something deeper: determination, adaptation, the refusal to surrender. General Walker, watching Threx's reactions, added quietly, "We don't just fight. We learn. Every time we bleed, we come back stronger." The alien captain was beginning to understand why Earth was called the Death World. Not because it was dangerous, but because humans survived everything and came back with sharper teeth. Then came the most shocking display yet. One hologram showed simulations. What if Earth was invaded by aliens? In one simulation, humans lost the first battle, but then they learned the enemy's language, stole their technology, hacked their ships, turned alien weapons against them. In another, humans poisoned their own planet, making it uninhabitable for aliens. They preferred to destroy their own home rather than give it to invaders. One final scenario showed humans unleashing all their nuclear weapons, then hiding underground, ready to evolve into something worse just to finish the enemy. Centuries later, Threx watched in horror. You would destroy yourselves just to kill your enemy? General Walker smiled grimly. That's the thing, Captain. We never really lose. Either we win, or we make sure no one else does. The room fell silent. Threx whispered to himself. A species that turns defeat into evolution. A race that makes war a lesson, not a loss. His officer leaned close. Captain, we cannot fight them. They don't fear death like we do. Threx knew then that war with humanity would be more than a risk. It would be a mistake written in the bones of extinct species. But the worst realization? This was their history. Without aliens involved, if they were this relentless with their own kind, what would they do to outsiders? General Walker turned to Threx one last time. You wanted to know why we're not ruling the stars? It's simple. We're not sure the stars would survive us. Threx returned to his quarters that night, his mind heavy. In the dark, with Earth's moon glowing in the sky, he whispered a warning to his homeworld. They have war in their bones. In their blood runs fire. If ever pushed to the edge, humanity will not fight for victory. They will fight for vengeance. He stared out the window, knowing this truth. The universe was lucky that humans preferred peace, because their version of war was extinction. Captain Threx could not sleep. Even in the quiet of his secure chamber, his mind replayed the brutal history of human wars he had just witnessed. He had seen species that fought. He had seen species that defended. But humans, they did more. They adapted. By morning, General Walker had prepared one final session for Threx before his departure. But this time, instead of weapons or history, they were taken to a different place, not a vault, but a university. A quiet place of learning. Why here? Threx asked. Walker gave a grim smile. Because you've seen our weapons. But you haven't seen our real power yet. They entered a wide lecture hall where a woman stood waiting. She was older, with sharp eyes behind thin glasses, and a calm voice. Walker introduced her. This is Dr. Elaine Marrow, our top military psychologist. She doesn't build weapons, she studies minds. She's here to explain why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Threx frowned. You mean your intelligence? She chuckled softly. Not just intelligence. Something far worse. Let me show you. With a tap on her console, holographic images filled the hall scenes of soldiers, survivors, explorers, even prisoners of war. She began. Humans have a trait that no other species we know possesses fully. We don't break. Threx watched as scenes played out. Humans captured, beaten, starved, but still fighting. Still planning escape, still refusing to die quietly. Elaine continued. Our bodies fail. We bleed, we starve, we freeze. But our minds? They adapt. Pain becomes focus. Fear becomes alertness. Loss becomes rage. Threx watched footage of human soldiers in hopeless battles, fighting on with missing limbs or using scrap metal as weapons when ammo ran out. There was always a solution, no matter how primitive or savage. Dr. Elaine smiled faintly. You think your species understands survival, but humans? We don't just survive, we improve through suffering. Threx whispered to his officers. They weaponize their pain. Elaine nodded, overhearing him. Exactly. Every wound is a lesson. Every defeat sharpens us. Our history is full of people who faced extinction and became harder to kill. She played another recording, a human soldier in space, cut off from his fleet, surviving alone for months with no support, building tools from debris, even making weapons from alien tech just to fight back. Even isolated, Elaine said. Humans don't surrender. In fact, isolation makes us deadlier. We don't get softer. We grow cold, and creative. Threx could barely believe it, but how? Fear should crush them. Elaine shook her head. Fear fuels us. That's the difference. Other species see fear as a warning to flee. Humans. See fear as a challenge to overcome. Then she said the words that haunted Threx. Humans are the only species that gets smarter the more you hurt them. Threx and his officers stood frozen. He thought of his own people, how they avoided pain, how they trained to survive, but never to embrace hardship. But humans, they became more dangerous the more they suffered. Elaine ended her session with a chilling thought. Remember this, Captain. If you ever fight humans and you hurt them them back. Not as they were, but as something worse. General. Walker added, we don't start wars because we like peace. We avoid wars because if we truly commit, we won't stop until our enemy no longer exists. Threx said nothing. His mind replayed every war, every human soldier, every battered face that still smiled. Before charging into death, he realized that humans didn't need better weapons than the galaxy. Their true weapon was themselves. Their mind when the session ended, Threx stood alone in the corridor, thinking hard. If the galaxy ever pushed humanity to the edge, they wouldn't just fight back with guns or bombs. They'd fight back with something worse. They'd fight back with everything that made them human. Threx recorded his warning to the Valari High Council. The humans carry extinction in their minds. Hurt them, and they will learn you. Break them, and they will rebuild stronger. Fear them ... For they are the weapon that never stops evolving. Threx looked up at the stars that night, and, for the first time in his life, he was truly afraid of what lived on that small blue planet called Earth. Captain Threx thought he had seen enough. The humans had shown him weapons, history, and their terrifying minds that refused to break. He was ready to leave Earth, to return home and warn the Valari Council, never provoke the humans. But, before he could depart, General Walker called for one final meeting. It was an invitation, but it felt like a warning. There's one more thing you need to see, the general said. Threx, already uneasy, followed. The path led to an elevator that went deeper than any facility he had visited so far. The walls grew colder, the air heavier, like the ground itself was warning them to turn back. Finally, the elevator doors opened to a vast, dark chamber lit only by dim lights along the floor. In the center stood a single object, floating in a magnetic field, a black, angular device that hummed quietly. It looked ordinary, but Threx's sensors screamed danger. What is this? Threx asked. Walker's face was serious, his voice lower than before. We call it Project Oblivion. Threx stared, confused. It was smaller than he expected. No bigger than a human chair. Yet it emitted a presence, as if space itself was bending around it. Dr. Elaine appeared from the shadows, standing beside the machine. We haven't built it fully, she said, because we're afraid of what happens if we finish it. Walker explained, it's a theoretical weapon, Captain. If activated, it triggers a chain reaction inside a star. Collapsing it. Threx froze. You mean a supernova? Elaine shook her head. Worse, it doesn't explode the star. It turns it into a black hole. Threx's eyes widened. His people had feared such phenomena in space, but this was a weapon to create it deliberately. You would collapse a star? Threx whispered. Why? Walker stepped forward. Because if Earth faces extinction, we'd make sure. No one wins, not even the galaxy. The idea was madness. But to humans, it was a strategy. Threx's officer whispered nervously, but if you collapse a star, you destroy your own solar system. Walker nodded coldly. Exactly. And any fleet that invades us. It was a weapon of mutual annihilation, an insurance policy not just to defeat an enemy, but to erase them from the cosmos. Threx whispered, this is not a weapon. This is the end of everything. Walker's expression darkened. We've studied alien empires. We know some think of humans as weak, fragile. But if we are pushed into a corner, If survival is truly impossible, then oblivion is our answer. Elaine added, there are rumors in the galaxy that Earth is a quiet world, a small world. But if we ever build this fully, the stars themselves will whisper fear of humans. Threx stood, shaking. His species had built weapons to conquer, to dominate. But they never built weapons to destroy everything, including themselves. And yet, this small, dangerous species from a death world had prepared such a nightmare. You would really do this? Threx asked quietly. Walker's answer was simple. If the universe gives us no choice, yes. Threx understood then that humans didn't just create weapons to win wars. They created them to guarantee that even in death, their enemy would remember them, or never exist to remember at all. He stared at the black device and imagined the horror of watching the sun collapse, turning into a black hole, swallowing everything, the Earth, the stars, the enemy fleets into eternal darkness. Threx recorded his report. The humans possess a final weapon, not to conquer, not to fight, but to erase existence itself. If provoked beyond peace, they will ensure no one wins. Threx turned to Walker before leaving and asked, why show me this? Walker looked him in the eye and replied, because I want you to carry this message to your people. Leave Earth alone. We don't want to use oblivion, but we built it because we can. As Threx left the dark chamber, he couldn't help but glance at the silent black device one last time, small, quiet, deadly, and, he knew in his bones, the deadliest weapon of all was the human decision to use it. Captain Threx returned to his homeworld with a heavy mind and a heavier heart. The journey through the stars back to the Valari system was silent. His officers barely spoke. They had seen the depths of human madness, the weapons, the wars, the terrifying Project Oblivion that could swallow a star. Yet despite all the horrors, Threx knew one thing. The Council had to understand, or everything would burn. The Grand Council of the Valari Alliance was held in a colossal hall of light and marble. Elders with skin like pale stone and eyes like silver moons gathered around a circular chamber. Hundreds of species in the Alliance watched the live broadcast. All expected news of a weak world, but Threx stood before them with a grim face and a data crystal clenched tightly in his hand. Captain Threx, the High Elders spoke with calm authority. Report your findings on Earth. Threx swallowed hard, then stepped forward. Humans are not what we thought. Murmurs broke out. One counselor laughed softly. We have observed them for decades. Primitive, divided, emotional. How dangerous could they be? Threx raised the crystal. Permit me to show you. He activated the projection. The chamber dimmed, and images flickered to life. Human wars, their weapons, the bioweapons, the psychological conditioning, the simulations of their extinction. Plans. The final image froze on Project Oblivion, the star-collapsing device that sat quietly like a sleeping god of death. The room went still. One counselor sneered. Surely this is exaggeration. They would destroy their own star? Threx turned sharply, his voice iron. They would, counselor, without hesitation. They do not see war as victory. They see war as survival or revenge. Another elder, the scholar of the outer systems, looked concerned. But such destruction would doom them too. Threx nodded. That is why you must fear them. They do not fear doom. They prefer extinction over surrender. The hall darkened with tension. Threx pressed on. Their psychology is their weapon. Hurt them, and they become colder, smarter, deadlier. Defeat them, and they return sharper. Corner them, and they will take you to the grave with them. The council was silent. Then the youngest elder, Neri, asked softly, Captain. If this is all true, what do you advise? Threx stared at them, his face pale but certain. We must avoid war with Earth at any cost. If they remain peaceful, let them be. If they seek the stars, welcome them. But if we strike first, we will die last. One old counselor shook his head. I do not believe a species so fractured could threaten us. Threx played the final message, General Walker's personal warning. We don't want war, but if you bring it to us, we'll end more than just the war. We'll end you, the words echoed. The chamber sat frozen. Then the High Elder spoke. Gravely, very well. Let it be written, the Valari Alliance will not provoke the humans. We will monitor them, respect them, and if peace is offered, we accept. Some protested. Some whispered of weakness. But the motion passed. As Threx left the council, Neri approached him quietly. Captain. Are they truly that dangerous? Threx looked to the stars above, their distant light cold and indifferent. You asked if they are dangerous? They are not dangerous because of their weapons, Neri. They are dangerous because they are still holding back. Captain Threx stood once more aboard his ship, gazing silently out the viewing window. The stars stretched endlessly, cold and distant. Yet one tiny blue dot in the distance haunted him. Earth. The Valari Council had made their decision, no war. With humans. The official message was sent. Peaceful relations, careful observation, never aggression. On paper, it was settled, but deep in his gut, Threx knew something dangerous lingered beneath the surface, something the Council didn't understand and perhaps never would. His console beeped. A private message had just arrived. It was from General Walker, not a transmission to the Council, not a formal statement, but a message meant for him alone. Threx sat, opened the file, and the human general's face appeared on the screen. He wasn't in his formal uniform this time. He looked tired, calm, but his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, were sharp as blades. Walker spoke simply. Captain Threx, you have seen what we showed you. But not everything. There are still weapons you didn't see. Still strategies we didn't mention. And there is one truth you must carry home. We don't like war. We don't want war. But if war ever comes to Earth, we won't fight for peace. We'll fight for silence. We'll fight until the stars forget you ever existed. The message ended. There was no threat in his voice, no anger. Just certainty. Threx sat back, the chill running through his veins. He realized then that this was the real message, not the Council's decision, not the Alliance's peace. The unspoken warning was simple. Do not wake the human war machine, for in the depths of every human heart, there was a quiet monster. A creature that didn't roar, didn't boast. It simply waited for the right reason, for the right spark. And when it woke, it didn't want to win. It wanted to erase. Threx stood, watching Earth one last time. He whispered, let the galaxy believe humans are fragile. Let them think they're weak. But I know the truth. They are the quiet ones in the bar. The ones you should never provoke. Because when they stand the bar burns. With that, Threx set course for home. The stars watched silently, but Threx felt their light a little colder now. A little more afraid. Because somewhere on that tiny death world, humans were smiling. Because they had won a war. Without firing a single shot.